Shalom. This video is about the current presidential election and Israel, and especially about Barack Obama. There's a serious question in the pro-Israel community about Barack Obama and Israel. Now, there's definitely aspects that are positive. He sent his kids to my alma mater, a school that's Orthodox and conservative on the south side of Chicago, Jewish. He's being supported by Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, his senior senator of Illinois, who's pro-Israel. His co-chair in the national campaign is Congresswoman Schakowsky, my congresswoman, who's strong on Israel. He's supported by Jeff Schoenberg of the Illinois State Senate, who's strong on Israel. His major speech at the AIPAC convention about Israel was very good, and he's made many statements since. So that all seems good, but there are three very serious questions that need to be answered. Now, I know that if you're very liberal, you'll support Obama no matter what, because he was the most liberal senator in the United States Senate when you add up all the votes. But if you're not that far left and you're concerned about the state of Israel, there's some very serious questions. Number one, and this is not only about the security of Israel, this one's about the security of the whole world. He said that in November of 2007 that we should sit down with the leadership of Iran and tell them we don't want regime change and we should talk with them. And that is inexplicable. The head of Iran is Hitler. The guy says constantly he wants to destroy Israel. We all know they've got missiles now that can reach Israel and Europe. And they're developing missiles that can reach the United States. They're creating terrorism all over the world, training it, funding it, helping it. And this ridiculous study that said that they're not bent on a nuclear arsenal has been completely dismissed by most of the foreign policy establishment that supports Israel and by Israel itself. It's just ridiculous. Of course they're trying to get nuclear arms, put them on the end of their missiles. So this guy, how is this different than Chamberlain saying, oh, yeah, we can work with Hitler? It's inexplicable. The guy is so naive or just wrong. So please explain that. Number two, it's a ridiculous charge that he's a Muslim. That's been going around the internet, completely discredited. He's a Christian. Problem is the kind of Christian. He goes to a church whose minister is anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, who's a Farrakhan supporter, and has made claims about Israel being an apartheid state and how just very racist, anti-Semitic comments. And the guy's also a black empowered minister. So I have Jewish friends who say, well, we don't always agree with our rabbi. Well, that's a ridiculous comparison. Nobody would go to a synagogue unless if a rabbi said stuff like that about another country, a democracy. If they did, they'd have to own responsibility for it or disavow it. So has Obama disavowed his minister's anti-Semitism and his racist comments? Third, there's a very serious charge by Ed Lasky in the writing in an article in the American Thinker. I'll give you the date, January 23rd, 2008, in which he talks about his foreign policy team, Obama's. First of all, there's this guy named Robert Malley, whose father was an Arab and a clear anti-Israel guy. And Malley, too. Some of the charges that Lasky makes in this very comprehensive article is that he blames Israel for the failure of Camp David when everybody blamed Arafat, basically, except the revisionists. Malley's views are sharply at odds with the views of others who participated at Camp David, including Ambassador Dennis Ross and President Bill Clinton. He's been supported by Norm Finkelstein, the discredited professor, anti-Israel of DePaul, who was fired recently. He's been a willing propagandist, bending the truth to serve an agenda that is markedly anti-Israel. Heads a group of Middle East policy advisors, a think tank funded by anti-Israel people. He's co-authored an article by one of Arafat's advisors. And the other name bandied about by Obama's people is Brzezinski, who was Jimmy Carter's foreign policy advisor. And we know Jimmy Carter's recent book is an anti-Israel book. Jimmy Carter told Cyrus Vance, at Cyrus Vance's words, supposedly, that if he was elected to a second term, he'd sell Israel down the river. We can't take for granted that an American president is going to be pro-Israel. And so even though Obama's credentials seem good, we got these serious questions that need to be answered. Number one, about Iran and regime change and talking to the president. How is that not Chamberlain and Hitler? Number two, about his minister. Number three, about his foreign policy advisors. We know Giuliani's team would have been very supportive of Israel. One of the strongest senators in U.S. history for Israel, Senator Rudy Boschwitz of Minnesota, formerly, is a McCain supporter. Hillary Clinton's support for Israel is unquestionable, even though some early mistakes like hugging Mrs. Arafat. So we have these serious questions about Obama that should be answered. Could well be that he turns out to be a pro-Israel guy. He probably is, but we need to answer these questions. So please help us.